Hey friends, it's Bill. It's Sunday, July 19th. Got a beautiful morning here. Don't have all the smoke in the sky, which is nice. We don't have any of that nasty weather we had all day yesterday, so that's awesome. Yesterday was something else. Um, Something I just thought I would throw up a video and chat about and just kind of free-form flow on this. I was thinking about it, and I think about this every so often, when I'm thinking about the different variables and why our society is so messed up and why we can't seem to get everybody to come to any sort of common ground and really work towards solutions to the major things that people are going through. Um, it's kind of a taboo subject, I think. I see videos, people talk about it here and there. Um, and I've had my own thoughts about this for a while, but what I think is a big contributing factor to how messed up everything is the just the changing of generations and their attitudes towards work and how they are able to sustain life and acquire the things that they desire and make ends meet and also be able to take care of families and stuff. And I mean, you always hear generation, kind of talking down on the generation after them and so forth. That they're lazier, they don't work as hard, they don't want to work, all that stuff. And I think that is really worth dissecting to kind of find where the BS or the disconnect is and all of it. um, you know the further you go back in time, the harder people had to work. And when you go back to like the early 1900s, everybody was just trying to get by and work. And then the Great Depression came along and made so many people poor and have to basically just scrounge for whatever they could for food and paying bills and being able to work and get by. And then you have the war. World War II came along, and that created a huge economic boom in this country, with the production of defense materials. And having the country all bought in on the war, and us trying to do the right thing and be the good guys. And all those people worked very hard. And I think that hold on a second. Very cool, dude. Very cool. I like it. All those people worked hard, and there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and there was a lot of pride in everything they did, and it was well earned and deserved. And then we get to the 80s, and then the 90s, and we start to climb out of all of these terrible economic situations, and people are starting to become more economically viable and prosper, and are on paths to achieve their goals. And we come the turn of the century, a lot of stuff changed in all of that. And it's, I don't want to be an asshole and call out generations, but I feel like the baby boomer generation was the last generation to really fully benefit from all of the gains over the 19th or the 20th century. And I'm not even taking away that they worked hard and everything, but there was a lot more opportunity created because of the good economic standing that the country was in. And somewhere along the way, and I really feel strongly that Fox News was a huge part of this here, where they came on the scene and they tried to create grievances and whatnot, and they really pumped you know the baby boomer generation and older generations were the ones that were initially and still are primarily drawn to their rhetoric. And they started to convince all of their viewers and the people that were really into what they were saying, that they worked harder than everybody, they're better than everybody, they were smarter than everybody. And it's kind of messed up. I'm a Gen Xer, and I grew up with all of those values and ethics and stuff instilled in me, and I use that to like work really hard. And um, it's difficult to have to face the generation before me, looking down on us like we're the ones that weren't working hard or anything, but we're the ones that started to get dropped off of the social contract, as the 90s were probably the thriving time in this country for economics. And people could easily get businesses started, and there was a lot more capital available, there was a lot more um, willingness to lend, and there was lower interest rates, and everything was right in the world, or right in the country at that time, to be able to um, to be able to sorry, my son came out here and I told him to hold off a minute. um, to be able to really like start businesses and grow and thrive, and all because of that, a lot of people were able to start their own businesses. And go ahead, don't hang around, make sure you come back. They were able to start businesses and stuff, and it feels like it kind of inflated a lot of people's egos, that the things that I was just talking about, to inflate their egos with, they worked harder and they were smarter, and now the generations after them are lazy and garbage and don't have the same drive and ambitions. It's not the case. I have a lot of ideas for different businesses that I would like to kick off and start, and I've even like done little starts on them, but like I don't have money to do any of that stuff. I can't take out loans for this stuff because I'm so underwater on everything else I have to pay for all the time, and I don't even have nice things or great things or anything worth any value, but I still get up and go to work every day and deal with the rat race. And unfortunately for me, I recognize the degradation of all of this and the things that lead to it, the constant exploitation of everybody in society, and the exponential growth of corporate America, and in tandem the constant efforts by the government to deregulate and just basically squash consumer protections to allow these people to just keep the exploitation going. And now we're at a time where like things are just insane. Like everything is so expensive, and I'll use before I get into this, I guess I'll say that something that made me think about this morning enough to make a video is that I saw this article about now, you know people need to lean on their parents to help them fund getting through life right now, because it's really not possible for a lot of people. Everything costs more than you make. And during the 90s and stuff like that, people were able to afford multiple vehicles, buy a home at a reasonable price, still go on vacations, take care of their kids' needs and extracurricular activities and whatnot. And that's not the case anymore. Now it's like you choose one thing. I haven't been on a real vacation, in 24 years. Just can't afford it. I'm exhausted. I'd love to go on vacation somewhere for a week and just forget about everything and have a little tropical time, and toes in the sand, or just be out camping for a week in nature and try to reset everything. But just it's not possible. I have to work my full-time job, whatever little side stuff that I'm able to do, and that's everybody. You got to work 2 3 jobs. And you hear on the news and all these opinions that people are living beyond their means. But like, if you're spending you know half to 3/4 of your waking life just working, and you got no time, and you still have no money to be able to do anything leisurely. They're talking about cutting out Netflix or cutting out going to get a coffee before work or whatever, and it's kind of like, fuck that. Like, what are you getting back out of life if all you're doing is working to make other people ridiculous amounts of money while they got their freaking foot on your side of your head on the pavement, and you can't do anything for leisure to offset and make things, enjoyable. You can do little things here and there, sure, but they still are going to be costly and it's still going to hurt. You don't have the expendable income anymore that used to exist. And so, these previous generations that used to be able to do all these things, they just think that people are whining or they think people aren't working hard enough or whatever. But it's like, you didn't have to fucking work multiple jobs just to get by, just to pay your rent, to pay for groceries, pay for your car payment, pay for insurance, pay for, anything. You didn't have to do that. The previous generations didn't have to struggle through that. I mean, I want to say before the 80s and 90s anyway. Those people absolutely probably did in a lot of regards. And I'm not being dismissive whatsoever. But my problem here really is with the arrogance of previous generations towards newer generations. And rather than recognize, the fortune that they had at the time of their lives that they, were coming of age and the opportunities that were afforded to them and everything, it's really shitty to just shit on people and think that you were better than them and that you did anything different than them. Like, the reality is that you probably had it easier. Things were a lot more lax in general in society, and I think that that's something that people should really take into account, when they're going to just, be talking crap about other generations. I've talked in other videos about people talking down on, their neighbors and people of different flavors and races and whatever and ethnicities, different walks of life. And it's just another thing. It's another thing that people are using as an excuse to look down on people. And, there's big pillars in the society propping up agencies to be able to continue to force that narrative. And I don't know how we're going to ever fix anything and move forward in a more positive way if people can't get past these sort of things, step back from themselves and recognize these realities. And I'm not saying this to make anybody butthurt or mad at me, but when I talk in these videos, I'm trying to talk reality. And, a lot of people don't want to face reality because it's unpleasant and, it's not fun to talk about and it can put people in a bad mood, and I get it. But, like, we all need to collectively come together to find common ground to fix things in our society. And this is another contributing factor, I think, that's worth talking about. And, maybe if a lot of the people that were just are glued to Fox News and just continuing to breathe this stuff in as they, spew it out. If they could step back from that, maybe watch videos of people around the country that are struggling, just to even survive right now. People trying to live off the grid, people trying to, live in cars and RVs or storage units just to try and, gain up some money so that they can find a new place to live. That's all really sad, and we should not be at this point ever in the quote-unquote wealthiest nation in the world. So, it's just more food for thought here. But, the thing I saw this morning about, people now leaning on their parents to help them to get by. A lot of these people fall into that baby boomer generation that need to be helping their kids out and their grandkids. And if you're going to have the attitude that, you worked harder and you're better than everybody below you, maybe you need to take a step back and realize that you're spending money that you thought that you had gained because you worked harder on everything, but a lot of times it was really because of your much better opportunity you were afforded, and all that money that you think you're gained, you're spending it now. So what's the government really doing for you these days? You're taking that money that you had in your savings and whatnot, and you're you're helping your younger generation offspring to get by. And so the wealth that you've accumulated that you're so proud of is now having to be redistributed to your kids and whatnot. Did you really gain in the end? I don't know. I everybody of every generation, every age just needs to step back and realize that everything going on around us right now is wrong, and we are the fix. The government's not the fix. The politicians aren't the fix. The celebrities aren't the fix. We're the fix. We have to care, and we have to embrace our neighbors and understand what they go through and why they live the way they do and why they think the way they do, and really just apply some psychology to all of it, because everything that we're living in right now um, is really just the result of being mind fucked for so long and so many people being able to manipulate us. So I don't know. I hope this video resonated with anybody, and I'm not trying to talk shit about anybody, but it's just kind of the reality. And I'll even say nowadays, people in our generation that haven't come to this realization, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials and stuff like that, they're looking down on the younger generations below them right now. And it's a really damaging path that we're on, being like that. We should try to be setting up the next generations to be able to keep this country thriving and keep their lives going and be what this country's all about, which is the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. All right. I hope you guys have a good Sunday, and I will talk to you soon. Peace out.